Welcome to Voices from the Hill, celebrating the vibrant literary voices of the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm your host, Jennifer Barone, along with Joseph Carboni, owner of Telegraph Hill Books. Each episode, we sit down with a local author to explore their creative process, inspirations, and the unique stories that shape our community. Today I'm joined by novelist and teacher Janis Cooke Newman, a deeply respected voice in the Bay Area literary community. Janis is the author of Mary, a luminous reimagining of Mary Todd Lincoln's life, a master plan for rescue, a novel that explores identity, memory, and the stories we inherit, and the memoir, The Russian Word for Snow, about adopting her son from Russia. Beyond her own writing, Janis is a longtime instructor at Page Street Writers, where she has guided countless writers in finding their voice and bringing their stories into the world. Her work lives at the intersection of history, imagination, emotional truth, and her teaching reflects a deep commitment to craft, community, and connection. In this conversation, we'll explore the creative life here in San Francisco, what it means to build literary community, and how writers can find both solitude and belonging in their work. So let's dive in. Janis Cooke Newman, welcome to Voices from the Hill.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you here. So I'd love for you to kick us off by starting a little bit about your personal writing journey, what inspires you, how you became also a teacher as well as a mentor.
I feel like I'm a little late to writing. I always wanted to be a writer, but I took detours into tech, and for many years, 15, I wrote corporate comedy here in San Francisco.
Wow. Did you perform corporate
No,
comedy?
thank goodness I did not. But my ex-husband did.
Wow.
We had started a company where, let's say Apple wants to take their sales team to Hawaii, but they want entertainment. We would find out all about them and what made them crazy and what they liked and what they didn't like. And we would write, it was kind of like a Saturday Night Live format show with sketches and song parodies, but all the jokes were about them.
Wow.
Yeah, but I think I learned so much as now a novelist from that time, because I learned about writing for an audience. You write a joke and it dies. You can really see it. So I think that it made me more aware of my reader as I went forward.
I was going to say that writing comedy is incredibly hard.
Yes, that's why there were 3 of us, because I have a theory that everybody only has 15 funny minutes every hour. So it was I guess it probably was like a foreshadowing of the writers' rooms for TV now, because we would be locked in a room writing these shows.
Have you ever written for TV?
I have not.
Oh, is that something that you might want to do with that experience?
Yeah, I certainly watch enough of it, so I could see moving into that for sure. But then, during that time, I adopted my son from Moscow, and I wanted to write a book. I wanted to write the book that I couldn't find when I was in the process of adopting, because the only books that were out there were about how to do it, or I don't know, this was the greatest moment of my life, but it really isn't. It's a lot of ups and downs. So I started to write that book. I kind of taught myself, and I was very lucky because memoirs were hot, and Russian adoption was 5,000 kids a year were coming from Russia to here. So I was able to sell that book and kick off my career.
Wow, it's so interesting, I think, to go from corporate comedy writing to something with so much gravitas and also something so personal. How did you navigate that journey?
It was hard. At first I thought it was going to be, the memoir would be all these funny, weird things that happened to us in Russia. And then I realized that's not really what people wanted. I had wonderful writing groups, and instructors, and they kept pushing me to write about all the stuff I didn't want to write about. Like, why did I wait so long to have kids? And why was it my mother dying from breast cancer made me want to have kids? And so I was forced to get into that. But I'm really grateful to them for sort of moving me in that. And I think that's the key to memoir. You have to write about the stuff you don't want to write about.
You have to take risks.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's not just, I'm going to go tell a bunch of funny stories.
Right. Well, it sounded like your personal writing journey started with community, too. Like, where did you go to get that kind of, that nurturing container to start your writing journey?
I was very lucky that I managed to get into what is now called Community of Writers, which is a terrific writers conference every year that they hold. And at the time I got in, they did not have a nonfiction or memoir track. It was only fiction. But that turned out to be really good for me because I did not realize till I got in that you were supposed to write your memoir like a novel. It's supposed to be scenes and, you know, it should move along with a narrative through line. So that was incredibly helpful. And then in my time there, I met a couple of writers, one of whom I just saw yesterday because we are still friends, and we formed our own writing group. And two of us out of like 4 people published books within like 2 years of doing that group, and I feel like they really, really helped me.
Do you think that like writing, having the support of like other writers around you sort of like propels you, gives you momentum, gives you connections? What is it about like writing with other writers that like propels you forward?
Well, first of all, they remind you that you're not insane, that other people would do this, because really, for the most part, the other people in your life don't get it. They don't get what the writer's life is like. So I think that's one of the biggest things we get. But there is always, like, you can talk through these things, like, I'm stuck here, or this. And sometimes just saying it out loud helps you. Sometimes they do. You know, we exchange work. I always have certain people I exchange work with, which is really helpful. You know, writing is very solitary, but it's hard to produce something, I think, in a vacuum. So you need that feedback all the time, and that encouragement you get from other people.
Do you think that writing memoir has become more popular? And I've also noticed that memoir is now sometimes called like fictional memoir. Like you just mentioned that you were supposed to write your memoir like a novel.
Right.
Like, it seems like that genre is evolving and there's different terminology. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the most interesting books about that is the new Gish Jen, Bad Bad Girl, because she bills it as a novel. And she kind of has to, because her mother, who is dead, is a character and talks to her. But it is really a way for her to talk about her difficult relationship with her mother. And why did her mother end up like this? And I think that is probably right now the evolution of what you're talking about, this combo memoir. Yes, it is very popular to write. It has, I have noticed, gotten increasingly more difficult to publish. And so most memoirists I know go to smaller presses. There is a fairly new imprint in the Bay Area called Sibylline Press that focuses on publishing women over 50.
Oh.
And I know a lot of women who have gotten their memoirs published through them.
What else do they publish? Is it mainly memoir?
No, they will do fiction. They will do fiction. They do historical fiction, regular fiction. They're very interesting. They are not quite a hybrid publisher. Writers come in and pay a certain amount for marketing, but they take care of everything else. And They have editors, and you also can't just call them and say, I want you to publish me. You have to, there's gatekeepers there.
For sure, yeah.
So it's an interesting model, and I'm hoping we'll see more of those models in publishing as time goes on, because it has gotten increasingly difficult to publish with the big five.
What do you see as like the next genre of writing coming out? Because I feel like there's more people getting into fantasy fiction, for instance, and fictional memoir, and like these hybrid sort of genres. But what do you think is like hot next, top of mind that you see in your community?
Well, I'm thinking about when I interview people for Page Street, I have them talking about what they're working on, and there are a lot of people, particularly younger people, working on some form or another of speculative fiction. It may be climate related, like since you recently did an event with that. There is a lot of dystopian future stuff, but sometimes it's also a lot of robots, AI. We're in the Bay Area, so this is what, we kind of live in the future here. So people are kind of writing to that. So I think I see a lot more loosening up of that. And the speculative fiction genre really encompassing a lot of things.
Do you feel like inspired to write on the in that genre, or what do you think might be next for you?
That's interesting. When I finish the book I'm currently working on, which is my first contemporary novel, I am actually thinking about writing a mystery. I have never read mysteries before, and I just started to explore them, and I see why people like them, because you can be pretty much guaranteed everything's going to get tied up at the end, and they're usually very plot-driven. And I want to write about what it's like to be a middle-aged woman in a place like San Francisco, something I finally know something about. And I was thinking that a mystery might be a good framework for something like that. So that's what I'm toying. I have not thought about doing speculative fiction, but who knows?
You never know. It sounds like you're branching off into all different new ways of writing to challenge yourself, I assume. And
I don't ever want to write the same book twice. After I published the novel about Mary Todd Lincoln, there was a lot of pressure to pick another president's wife, and your fans of that book will read this book. But I didn't want to do that again.
Do you feel like writers get pigeonholed really quickly when they have success with something?
I think so. I think, but that's any profession, and I think it's also, it probably feels really good to stick with what you know. But the Mary Lincoln book, okay, for the record, is like 650 pages long. By the end of that, I was kind of done with presidents' wives, and I wanted to go someplace else.
What made you want to write about her?
Oh, yeah, it's that. So my son was about 9 at the time, and I had taken him to Washington, D.C., and he was obsessed with John Wilkes Booth. I did, because John Wilkes Booth had a knife and a gun, and it was an exciting American history story. So I took him to Ford's Theater, and they talk about it. Then they take you across the street to where the boarding house where Lincoln died. And the ranger was talking about it, and he said, and Mary Lincoln was by his bedside, and the Secretary of War came out, and he said, "Get that woman out of here." And I had like a kind of physical reaction to it, where I was like, how dare you? That's her husband. And then I noticed every little tour we went on in D.C., somebody had something nasty to say about Mary Todd Lincoln. So I thought, I really need to know more about this woman. And I went looking for a historical novel about her, and there wasn't one. So then I picked up, Jean Baker has written this really interesting feminist biography of her, and I read it, and as I read it, I thought, oh, she is interesting. I mean, the term First Lady was coined for her. Oh. She was very politically savvy. I don't think Lincoln would have become president without her. And yet at the same time, she was a shopaholic. She probably had an affair while she was in the White House. And she also had a tell-all book written about her. And she was really into seances. And I thought, I am not going to understand this woman.
Did she have them at the White House?
Oh, yeah. But Lincoln was, too. I mean, in the Civil War time, actually, that was fairly common because so many people had lost family members. So seances and spiritualism was huge at that time. So I thought, I'm just going to write from her point of view, and I'm going to figure her out. And also a little bit, I wanted to sort of rescue her reputation.
I was thinking, well, first of all, when I'm hearing from you, like as a theme right now, is like find the story that you want to hear that doesn't exist and go write it, which is very inspiring. Like, as a woman, do you feel like there's barriers to that? Like us, for instance, like needing to get over needing anybody's like permission to do these kinds of things. Like it sounds very much like you are forging different new paths that maybe weren't there before. And like, is that just an aspect that we can't help as being women writers?
I think there's some of it. I will tell you this, whenever I teach memoir, there's always going to be a few women who come up to me to say, oh, do you think anybody's really interested in my story? Should I really write this? I can 100% guarantee you that no man has ever said that to me.
Right?
They're like, I'm fascinating. Here goes my story. I did feel a little like I couldn't write a male point of view for a while, and then because I am the mother of a son, I think that broke that. So my book, A Master Plan for Rescue, there are 5 points of view, but really 2 are the main characters, and one is a 12-year-old boy living in New York City during World War II, and the other is a young Jewish man living in Berlin as Hitler is coming into power, and later they interact. But I don't think I would have felt like I had permission to write those points of view until I became the mother of a boy. And I got a huge amount of insight into 12-year-old boys, for sure.
Do you think it's necessary? I feel like so many people have been writing, like, let's say the women's voice as a man for, like, I don't know, millennia. Like, do we need to have the real experience? Like, what is it about the real experience that makes it maybe juicier? Well,
I'm going to say this. You are now, like, treading on the big discussion about can you write from a point of view that's not you? Mm-hmm. Whether it's a different gender, a different race, a different ethnicity, a different age. And my personal feeling is, yeah, that's what we do as writers, particularly fiction writers, but you better get it right. Mm-hmm. So everybody has a different way of getting it right. For me, to get it right, to write as a man or a boy, I needed to be living with that kid. Mm-hmm. But not everybody needs that. Some people are just really good at getting inside the head of somebody else, somebody really different from them. Mm-hmm. I have a couple characters now in my book who are like young millennial age, and I use my son to sort of check things, so that I get their dialogue right.
Oh, the terminology is a lot.
Yeah, and it's different words, yes. I'm a lot older than that, so words that I would use, I think, yeah, they're probably not going to use that expression. Mm-hmm. So, I think you do need to be paying attention to the world around you if you want to write another point of view.
Yeah, it brings in the depth and maybe gets closer to the reality of that character, I would assume.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, there are certain truths about being human that supersede all of that, and so I think that's the other thing in novelists' favor, that we explore that. We're always exploring what is it like to be human in the world. And so I think that sort of transcends everything else in many ways.
In this environment of AI, especially right now, I feel like humanness is even more, I want to say, valuable, right? Like getting into the heart of our humanness, maybe the way we make mistakes, even our flaws. But now, do you feel like with the advent of AI that like the flawed human is almost like elevated, almost more beautiful, more important, more interesting?
That's That's an interesting question. You could be right about that. I have a good friend, and whenever, like lots of times at lunch at Page Street, we talk about, is AI going to take our jobs? I mean, because AI is writing books now. And one of the members who has been a business and science writer said, the thing is, AI can't feel.
Right.
And people can feel. And I think that's very, very key when you're writing a book. You need to make your reader feel things. People don't really want to read books if they don't feel something, if they're not rooting for the main character, or they're not worried about the main character, or they don't hate a character or love a character. So I feel like, at least for now, the emotional state of being human is what differentiates a human writer from an AI writer. Who knows what they'll learn in the future? But for now.
Yeah. When we're getting connected to a character, like I find historically, it seems it's usually an underdog character. Their life is a mess. There's a challenge they have to come over. It's like AI can't make a mess. Like AI sort of makes mistakes, yeah, but not like a big, giant, messy mistake the way humans do. Yeah. But that's what makes, I think, for a really good story and a really good character. It seems like we, as humans, connect to people who are struggling, connect to people that are like going through a lot, and we want to see like an underdog basically overcome something in a story. Do you feel like that's going to come forward even more?
I think you could be right about that. I mean, one of the things I'm always telling my students is don't protect your characters. Let your characters look bad.
Yeah.
Let them make bad decisions. Charles Baxter talks about let your character have unthinkable thoughts.
Oh.
These are really important things that we need to use as writers, and I think it's super easy to not do that, to present your characters as, pretty savvy and smart and got their life together, because I think we see our characters as reflections of ourselves, and we have to let go of that, show them making bad decisions all over the damn place and doing things that get them in trouble. Otherwise, your book is pretty boring.
Do you think your life is boring also if you go that route? I guess I'm wondering from what you're saying, like, what does writing teach us? What does the process of writing, like, teach us about knowing ourselves or, like, approaching life, like, in a deeper way?
And that's also interesting. About 7-8 years ago, I started to study Buddhism, and there is a whole big thing in Buddhism about suffering is caused by wanting things to be different than they are, right? Wanting things, desire, that is what causes suffering. And the thing is that in literature, it's the suffering and wanting of things that makes the story, that makes it interesting. So that has been a really interesting dichotomy for me, to get a sense of that, of, okay, this is what you would do for a happier life, but here's what you need to do to write a good book. And they're very different, the way you approach your characters and the way you think about them. So I think you learn that about yourself. I think also just anytime you write in a point of view, you begin to see, well, here's how I would react to this. But you learn that, but this person might react this other way. And I think that's a good lesson of, figuring out how do other people react to things. That the way the script my playbook is not everybody's playbook.
Is there something profound that you've learned about yourself through the process of each of these books? That you had the memoir and the one about Lincoln. Yeah, is there something that came forward for you about your own life?
Well, they always say that you are, in some way, always writing the same book over and over again. And I think the theme that I am always putting in my books, whether intentionally or not, is the idea of denial. And, who are the people who can look at the truth? Who are the people who can't look at the truth? And I think that as I've been writing, I've been thinking, yeah, that's a big thing for me, because I'm like a big believer in looking at things, looking at the reality of things. And I think that denial can cause a lot of problems in your life. So I think I haven't realized how important that was to me until I realized, this keeps turning up in all my books somehow.
Do you think like finding your personal truth is sort of like peeling an onion, where it's like you get to one layer and then there's even deeper to go?
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know, your personal truth can be a moving target, right? As you get older and have more experiences, I feel like a very different person than I was at 30. My personal truth at 30 is very different now. So I do think it's a bit of a moving target.
I love that. That brings me to something you said earlier, which is women over 50 writing here in the San Francisco Bay Area. What is it about like that demographic that has something special that they could bring forward? Like, what is it that the world needs to hear from their voice right now?
Well, I think that there's experience. I recently took a class on mystery writing, and the instructor said, most people who write mysteries are older because you need to have some experience. You need to understand things about human nature to write something like a mystery, because it's all about motives, and the reason people do things. And I think that with women of that demographic, they have been through a lot. And yet I also feel like to a large extent, because we are so youth-oriented in the Bay Area, that they are not listened to a lot. And they have really interesting things to say. That's been one of the interesting things about Page Street, because our ages there range from people in their 20s to a couple of people in their 80s, and everything in between. So when we sit down at lunch, you will have these different ages. And this is a place where I think everybody gets listened to, because we have this writing thing in common. And that's been very gratifying, because I think we get siloed with people our own age all the time. I mean, we kind of do it to ourselves a lot. And this forces us to spread out and be with all different ages.
And I feel like you get exposed to all the different things that people have experienced then, and you can bring that into your work too, like bring in that inspiration. Well, let's segue a little bit into the birth of Lit Camp. So that happened in 2012. Can you give us a background about that?
Yes. I started Lit Camp, which is a nonprofit, basically to run an annual writers' conference. Originally, the founders of Litquake had approached me about, we're thinking about doing a writers' conference. Do you want to curate it with us? And because I had been running the classes at the Writers' Grotto. So we went, we explored it, we played around with the numbers. It didn't make sense for them, but I had been up to it. It was a really nice little retreat center outside Calistoga, and I could see it happening. And so I said, okay, look, I'm going to do this. And you guys can help me do this, and we'll put it together. And we did it that first year, and it was a huge success. One of our instructors was Adam Johnson, and I picked him because I had just read The Orphan Master's Son and loved it. He came up, he taught, he was amazing, and 3 weeks later he won the Pulitzer for that. It made me look like a genius.
That's exciting.
Yes. But so anyway, that is how Lit Camp started.
Wow,
and
good start.
But it was mainly just to always run the yearly writers' conference. I wanted to create a writers' conference that was small. I love community of writers, but it's more like, 120, 150 people. We never had more than 40 writers at ours. And we're doing one this June where we are only doing 24 writers with 6 faculty members. So it's like a really good ratio. I wanted to fill that niche with the Writers' Conference. So that sort of was the beginning of Lit Camp. And we have run a conference almost every year since 2012. 1 year we didn't because our original place burned to the ground.
Oh, no.
Then we actually took it to Esalen.
Oh, wow.
And then COVID.
I'm noticing a thermal bath theme.
Yeah. Yeah. And then after COVID, Esalen had gotten a little too expensive.
Yeah.
Because I also want this to be affordable for riders. I don't want it to just be for rich riders. So we now do it up at Retreat Center in Boonville.
Okay.
Yeah, which is really lovely, and it's enough out of the way that you feel like you have gone somewhere.
Wow. Well, how did Lit Camp get into the birth of Page Street Writers? Were they connected, or was that a completely different project?
Well, they are connected now because Page Street is part of Lit Camp. But how Page Street started, it was 2022, kind of the tail end of the pandemic. And I had a friend who ran something called the Castro Co-op, which was a writers collective. I had been a member of it before COVID, and he was looking for a new space. And I also knew that the cafe across the street from San Francisco Zen Center was empty. Because I practice at San Francisco Zen Center, I knew that they had, before COVID, been thinking about making it a cafe for themselves. And then, of course, they were going to open March of 2020, so they didn't. And they decided, yeah, I don't think we want to be in the cafe business. So I said to them, how would you feel about renting this to writers? And they were like, yeah, that sounds great. So I went over to look at it. Okay, the space already looked like a cafe.
Was that the old Samovar?
Yes.
Oh my God, it's gorgeous, that space.
In fact, we have Samovar's sign in our basement. And then for a while it was Revelry, a French restaurant, but it had been empty since before the pandemic. And I loved it. And my friend that I had looked for the space for, he wanted something more traditional with offices. But while I was in there, I was thinking, all right, wait a minute. People love working in cafes.
Yes.
You know, and what if I remove everything they don't like about working in a cafe? Like, okay, if it's members only, the door is locked. You can leave your computer on the table and go to the bathroom. There's a kitchen and we provide coffee and tea, so there's no barista like giving you any side eye, like you better order something.
Go out, you leave, it's time to go.
Yeah. It's also a silent workspace. So except for lunch, we are a quiet workspace. And I thought, I wonder if this is really going to take off. And Zen Center really made it possible because they didn't make me sign a lease up front. They gave me a pretty reduced rate to kick off just to see if we could do it. And I had the community because of Lit Camp having been around for so long. Lit Camp had been around for like 10 years. So we had a big mailing list and I reached out to them. And before we opened, we had enough members to cover our costs.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, and I realized, you know, this is I think it's the only sustainable model. I know there are other writing cooperatives and collectives that have a more office-based model. But the thing is, you can only have so many members then. And not every member comes in every day. Whereas you come in, you find a seat, you start working.
Do you have to book a seat?
No, I'm very careful to make sure we never have so many members that you wouldn't find a seat.
Got it, okay.
And members also have access 24/7.
Oh, is it open 24 hours a day?
Yeah, they come and go via an app on their phone.
Oh my goodness.
So, because I want them to think of it as their space. So they can come whenever they want to work. They can work as long as they want. You could work for 48 hours straight if you wanted to. But the great thing about this model, which my friend calls the Gold's Gym model, is that I could accept more members than could fit in the space at one time.
Right.
Which in a city as expensive as San Francisco means we can be self-sustaining and means I don't have to charge writers a lot. And it means I can give fellowships out to writers.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, so the model really works, I think, here. And then, about a year and a half after we opened the Page Street in San Francisco, we opened one in Berkeley. I had a lot of writer friends over there who kept saying, I wish you were over here. So we found a space. We had to build it out to look like a cafe, but it is along the same lines. And then members can go to either one.
Wow. And now, you said that there's quiet hours, essentially, so, probably so obviously people could be writing. Is it a space where also the writers can interact in some way, besides lunch? Like, I noticed that you might have events and you have workshops there. Like, tell us a little bit more about, like, how writers can also connect in the space.
Right, because I wanted it to be more than a co-working space. I wanted it to be a community. So, yes, every day we gather in the back for lunch, and that's when people talk. Once a month, there is a happy hour in each space. So it's usually like a Friday around 5:30, and people can bring a guest, and we'll do that. We have craft groups, so any member can create a craft group, and any other member can join it. They typically meet in person in the spaces, usually between 5 and 6. We've got a memoir group, a short story group, a couple of novel groups. We had a screenplay group. We have a poetry group. I mean, it's great. And the members really drive this. They decide what the group should look like.
Wow.
So members can join that. We also just started, in San Francisco, I run a thing called the Page Street Salon once a month, where you can bring work, any genre, and whoever comes gets 10 minutes to use as they want, to read and get feedback. So we're always trying to give that to the members. We do a big free public reading every other month, alternating between San Francisco and Berkeley. How it works is I come up with a theme, I put out a call, I'll say if you want to be a reader, submit no more than 3 minutes, any genre on this theme, and I pick 15 readers. And it's a super fun night. I mean, it's very fast-paced. We get something like 70 to 80 people come, probably because we pour free wine. But
that always helps.
It does help. But it is another way members volunteer behind the bar, members read there. So we do that. We open our space every month for a free public Write Together session. We co-sponsor these with Cooke and the Bay Area Book Festival. And that's for anybody, for the public to come in and write on a Saturday morning in our space. What else do? We do a couple of big social events. So coming up in May, we go up to Marin Bocce and do a bocce tournament and picnic, which is super fun because we're all quite terrible. And then we do our holiday party in January, because that's when people can come, at the Bayview Boat Club. So there's always lots of these. And then you mentioned events. Yes, we partner with Cooke to do a series we call it How They Did It, and we ask writers to come and talk about how they did a certain aspect of getting their book out there. So we have one coming up in April on the art of revision. How they did it, the art of revision.
You'll be teaching as part of this, right?
I'm going to be the moderator for that one.
Okay.
And what I did was I asked writers in all different genres. So Ma, who you mentioned, she's doing poetry.
Ma Shane Wynn.
Yes. She's going to do poetry. I have someone doing creative nonfiction, someone doing short story, and someone doing novels.
Okay.
So they'll each talk about that aspect of revision.
Okay.
So I try to make sure all our events, it's not just somebody reading from their book. It's always something that you're going to learn something.
Well, so in this whole experience, this all sounds amazing, and that space is so beautiful that I've been to before. What do you think is the barrier for writers in terms of like finding community? Like, what do you think it is for them that they're needing, that maybe they're afraid of, that maybe like, they just don't even know exists, about like getting connected to other writers?
I think there's numerous things. I think as a whole, writers are not super extroverted. We chose a profession where we stay in a little room with our imaginary friends, and we're happy doing that. So I think there's some of that. I think I think there's also a little imposter syndrome happens. People, we have a lot of members at Page Street who are people who are new. They'll say to me, I always wanted to be a writer, and now I'm going to explore this. And they could be 20 telling me this, and they could be 70 telling me this. And so I think they feel like they can't call themselves writers. And I'm always trying to say, okay, you get to decide whether you are a writer. Unfortunately, someone else decides if you're an author, but you decide if you're a writer. So I think there's some of that stands in the way. I think money. It was one of the reasons I wanted to make sure that Page Street was affordable and that we did have fellowships so that money wouldn't be a barrier. Because I do know in the early days when I was a Grotto member and we all had offices, at some point my rent went up to like $450 a month, and it was like, okay, I'm even a published writer. I can't afford to come and do this anymore. So I think money is part of it, but I think it's also just finding the people, right? So a lot of people come to us through Liquake and the events we do with them.
Well, I guess let's end here. I have this last question for you, which is also through this experience. I'm sure you've seen so many writers working on their stuff, hopefully getting published. What has been maybe the most exciting, surprising thing that has happened as part of creating Page Street Writers for you?
What has been, I think, almost a little surprising is how well it works. Because you never know. I had many sleepless nights saying, you're crazy, you're gonna lose a bunch of money doing this. But it's the members. The members make it work. I have never had to ask a member to leave. I do personally interview everybody before they become a member, but there's a vibe about the place where people are encouraging and it's not competitive. And I watch them, make friendships amongst themselves, and I watch them create these craft groups, and it works better than I ever imagined it would. And I would say that every day that I'm there and I come in and I see people busily writing at their desks, it feels really good to me. It's like, oh yeah, I made that happen. And here they are. The writers are here. So that is really gratifying.
That is a beautiful, beautiful thing to create. Yeah. Well, thank you. I just want to thank you so much, Janis, for sharing your work, for sharing all these beautiful spaces that you have developed, and your journey as a writer in the Bay Area. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you. So for listeners who would like to learn more about Page Street Writers, visit pagestreet.org and litcamp.writers.org. And to find out about Janis Cooke Newman and her work and her beautiful books, you can visit janiscookenewman.com. And you can find her books at your local independent bookstores, such as Telegraph Hill Books. Thank you for joining us, Janis.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. This podcast is brought to you by Telegraph Hill Arts and Literature. If you enjoyed today's episode, please follow, subscribe, and leave us a review. Visit telhighlit.org to find out about our local events such as author talks, writing workshops, and more. Consider making a donation to support our public programs. If you're a Bay Area author interested in being on the show, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out to us at submissions@telhighlit.org. Thanks again for tuning in. I'm Jennifer Barone, along with Joseph Carboni at Telegraph Hill Arts and Literature, and this has been Voices from the Hill. Until next time, keep reading, keep writing, stay inspired, and come visit us at Telegraph Hill Books in North Beach, San Francisco.